All right. This is Aquarian Anarchy, and I'm Marcus Pulis. And you'll notice there's 4 people up here today instead of 3. Some time ago, we decided that we'd like to bring on some people that have voluntarist ideas that are solution based, not just somebody sitting around bitching about the problems of the world. We wanted to start interviewing people who had ideas on how to fix the problem of the state. And both Chad and I have been friends with Adam Kokesh, who you see over here, for going on around 2 years. And I have to say that I owe Adam an awful lot. He is a very good friend. And the number one thing he did for me was he got me off my fucking ass and I started doing shit instead of just bitching about shit.
Word.
Right. And
same here. And by the way, it's been like 3 years because I met Adam in 17, and then I met you in like February or March of 18.
Right.
So it's been almost 3 years. Yeah.
So Adam has some interesting ideas beyond his run that he did for the not president for to dissolve the federal government. And beyond that idea, he has several other projects that he's working on, particularly the Garden of Freedom, that are solutions based. And so I guess from there, I'll let him take it from there and explain to you guys how he sees that and how he believes that that can help us get to a more voluntary society and towards more freedom. So glad to have you on, Adam, and welcome aboard Aquarian Anarchy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you, Marcus, and you and Chad. Your friendship and support has meant a lot to me over the last few years, and being able to do that, everything that we've done as a team, everybody who's helped me out, every project that I've been involved with, that you guys have been involved with as well. And I have to give a caveat, as you know, anytime I'm introduced as a presidential candidate or former presidential candidate, yes, I do intend to run on this platform again in 4 years, assuming the support continues to build for this idea of localization, decentralization of government by taking it apart from the top down. And the platform was to take the federal government through a peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy process, leaving us with 50 independent states and up to 562 sovereign native nations as the first step for American localization. And you'll notice in there the words top down, taking government apart from the top down. And, you know, along with, you know, how you guys identify ideologically, you know, all sorts of different labels. For me personally, it's the ethical premise of voluntarism. We all want to see a world where there is no force, fraud, or coercion, where every human relationship, there it is, Chad, on the t-shirt, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. That's it. And to get to a world where that really is the norm. And when you go, hey, well, that's a nice idea, aren't we all just kind of working towards that anyway? And you go, yeah, but where's the worst violation of this basic ethical concept? You know, and you go, oh, governments. Oh yeah. How do we, and then when you say, you know, the government problem, we all know what you're talking about, right? But it's, you know, a question of how do we get there? And I do believe that it is inevitable. It is the course of human progress. And as someone who wants to serve justice and righteousness, as an activist, first and foremost, motivated by a deep-seated sense of injustice, how do I apply these ideas most effectively to serve humanity's progress towards the world of real global harmony for the whole human family? That's what we're talking about, really, as the Libertarian Party platform puts it, nothing less than a world set free in our lifetimes. So that is kind of the top-down approach. And I don't want to tell people, like, this is the only way, it's all about politics. And I do believe that politics is an essential battlefield in the fight over human progress. There is a dividing line of people who are willing to hold back human progress for personal gain, or just repeating their own traumas, whatever the case may be. And those of us who want to actively, conscientiously look forward to that ideal, at least that next horizon for humanity of a world of that level of ethical harmony. So the bottom-up solution, since I didn't win the primary, and I'm happy to be supporting Joe Jorgensen, great candidate. And I said from the beginning, if the result of my candidacy is that we get someone like Joe Jorgensen instead of someone like Gary Johnson, it will have all been worth it. And even for, and I am absolutely thrilled that we have someone communicating on the platform of the presidency policy as clearly grounded in libertarian principles as she is. She's the best candidate we've had in a long time on that very important count. So the bottom-up answer is secession. And I own 11 acres here in the mountains of Arizona. We call it the Garden of Freedom, or Gardenia for short, or the
really long name,
sovereign, bountiful. I mean, Chad, I almost had it. I almost had it.
I'm sorry. I just know it's really fucking long. I know that much.
The great and bountiful, beautiful, sovereign, allodial kingdom of the Garden of Freedom in perpetuity. But Gardenia, and you can call us Gardenians if you like. And it's obviously a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and we are making fun of governments. We are lampooning the very concept of authority, but we are claiming it. And while my wife is the Queen of Gardenia, Queen Samantha I, still this is me, my property. I own this, and if there's a co-owner, it's my wife, obviously. But I am declaring that this land that according to the U.S. government's official records, I own outright.
Right.
We are going to declare sovereignty and say, this is now an independent country. And there is a great human tradition of this, you might have heard of the American Revolution. Like that's a pretty good example. Most kids have heard of that. But in the realm of micronations, there is a great history, and I'd like to just cite 3 real quickly to wrap this up that I'd like to take as examples and inspirations. And one is the joke secession of the Conch Republic that was the Florida Keys, when the Border Patrol, U.S. Border Patrol, put up a checkpoint on the one causeway connecting the islands to the mainland. And they said, oh, what, you're going to put up a border there? Well, then screw you. We're our own country, and we're the Conch Republic, and we declare war on the United States. And they went, and there's like, some street theater kind of stuff, naval battle, and they won, by sort of making this mock secession. They made the point, and it was hurting tourism. It was a pain in the butt for a lot of people, and they removed the checkpoint. Another example is Sealand, and Sealand is a reclaimed British sea fort from World War II. And they put these up. It's these 2 giant steel pylons coming out of the ocean with a platform on top. And they were running pirate radio out of there for a while. The British government wanted to reclaim all of the forts that they had made and destroy them, and they did, except for this one that was occupied in international waters, and they just said, you know what, we'll just leave it. And they have been effectively sovereign and left alone. Good. Third example is Molossia, which is a small sovereign country in Nevada, surrounded by Nevada, where the president pays foreign aid to the local county of the American government that surrounds him. And it just so happens to be the amount that they want in property tax. And other than that, they leave him alone. And, he does get to, have fun with that. And a lot of what he does is a joke. But there's also a very serious element to that. And I think we can take the best of all 3 of those examples with what we're doing here. So what we did on Independence Day just a week ago was declare our intent to declare sovereignty a year from that day. So July 4th next year, we will be formally declaring our independence, having done by then all of the necessary groundwork to ensure a peaceful transition and a cooperative relationship between the government of Gardenia and the United States.
That's awesome. I want to. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, particularly about this, is because I personally really like this idea. You know, I live in a little town. It would be a little bit more difficult for me to do it than it would be for you, because you have 10 acres and what have you. But I like the idea, and where I personally like the idea is it merges kind of the sedition, secessionist idea with the agorist kind of like what Derrick Rose is doing with the freedom cells, where it's kind of like a pop-up anarchist voluntarist community, and them deciding to kind of work together and only work together. And I like that idea, personally. And I think that you know, there are 1,000 different ways, this is something that I've talked about a lot, to get to a voluntary society. Though the show is called Aquarian Anarchy, and that's a long story to how I got there. I consider myself a voluntarist as well, and I think that it is a much better descriptor. I kind of got stuck with the title of Aquarian Anarchy, but I decided to claim it and just say, fuck it, I'm an anarchist. So, but because to a degree it makes sense. It's just that voluntarism makes more sense. So anyhow, I really like the idea, and I also like the idea that you have of not only doing it yourself, but encouraging cooperation with other people who might follow you. You want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Just, of course, if we're going to start a new nation, and what makes us distinct from other countries around the world is that we actually care about and respect freedom. And by the way, it's counterintuitive for a lot of libertarians when they hear, wait, you're doing a libertarian kingdom? You're going to be the king? Well, yeah, I own it. It's my land. I can be the king if I want. Like, well, why be president if you can be a king? So it is the form of government that, you know, we talk about, and I think for you, even as a self-identified anarchist, is that you're not against people having social organization. You're not against people having institutions that they call government, that govern even, that actually do control things. The question is, are they ethical or not? Are they voluntary? Do they respect individual rights, or what you might call anarchist ethics? Anarchy as in without rulers, as in that no one is justified in using force against you.
Yeah, exactly. Nico, just from somebody, because Chad and I are so inside baseball with a lot of the stuff that Adam talks about. How did that kind of hit you? Because I know you know who Adam is and all of that, but
I'm not like deep with his work. Yeah, no, he's his ideas actually, I encourage it. I super encourage it. It reminds me of like how civilizations used to be. They were so cool. They were peaceful, minding their own business. Now, when somebody of cruelness came into rule, they'd be like, all right, let's go expand land. But at the end of the day, everybody likes their own little borders, their boundaries. Everybody's got their own talents or something that they can bring to the community, so that I can get sharing and the community can get to flowing. Because I know for sure that what I can do, not everybody can do on this block, and whatever my neighbors can do, they can do, and I can't do. So it gives a chance for growing with the community, even personally as well. Like, you know, you hear those towns, like small little towns where you know everybody. Well, it gives you that chance of knowing your community and building a bigger family outside your family.
Yeah.
So Gardenia, at least as the plan is now, is going to be a constitutional proprietarian monarchy for its form of government. So that means it is, you know, it's based on property rights. I am claiming sovereignty over all of that property as a monarch, as a king, saying I am the absolute ruler of this land. I own it. It is mine. No one else has any other authority or claim to this here whatsoever. And it's constitutional in the sense that I'm just going to have the courtesy to my citizens of making my policies clear in written documents, where I will explicitly explain my policy for respecting property and respecting the rights of people as citizens, visitors, or residents of Gardenia. And so that's what sets us apart as a nation compared to every other one on earth whose government directly says, no, ethics, like we don't care. We're in charge because we say so. And our property is essentially the entire country. And if you own property, it's by our courtesy, our privilege, and we can take that away at any time from you if we feel like it.
All the rules are arbitrary.
Exactly. So of course we need a place for other nations that might decide to embrace the same ethical foundation to stick together. And I don't think the United Nations of Freedom is going to be jumping to recognize our status as a sovereign nation. So it occurred to me that it would make sense to start the United Nations of Freedom in order to have a legitimate alternative for countries that, at least their governments, care about freedom.
For sure.
Nice.
And again, one of the things I really like about the whole idea is, and everything you just presented, some of which I didn't know, like the writing all of the constitutional idea, writing everything down. One of the things that personally, I'm a history buff, which many people know, but this goes back to Locke and the idea of having natural law and valid civil law. And being that you can, one, change it, and two, everyone's aware of it, it meets Locke's criteria for a valid civil law, whereas the United States does not.
Well, worse than that, like they actually have shit written down and then they fucking ignore it, or they just arbitrarily enforce it or don't enforce it whenever the hell they want to, and it's very it's basically like it's this cheat code for now Nico's gone. What the hell's going on? It's like this cheat code for like, all right, so no matter what, we always win. It's like the in Batman, the Dark Knight. It's the Dark Knight, I think, is the one in between. Yes, the one with the Heath Ledger Joker, where Two-Face, Harvey Dent has the coin it's the same on both sides. So it's like heads I win, tails you lose, basically. But it doesn't matter. It's like heads I win, tails you win. So it's fair, I'm not saying heads I win, tails you lose. It's heads I win, tails you win, except that there's no tails. So it's like this illusion of fairness, and I got to make sure that I see when Nico comes in now. Hopefully, yeah, there he is. All right. So Adam, my question for you, I have two questions. The first one's should be quick because it's kind of a joke. So when is Samantha going to change her name to Eve? Because you can't have the Garden of Freedom and be Adam and Samantha. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right.
It's got to be Adam. It's got to be Adam and Eve. No, I'm just joking. No. So the real the question I wanted to ask is so I think a lot of this, because Marcus and I have been talking. We've been doing this together. Marcus has done it for over a year now, or roughly a year, largely by himself. And then he asked me to come on, and I just kind of came on as a guest, and then he kept asking me to come back, and so now it's kind of like we're co-hosting this thing, and then we brought Nico in, and we're trio co-hosting this thing. And one of the things that, like Marcus was talking about, we wanted to try to look at, all right, we can keep reading articles and talking about all the evil shit that governments are trying to do to us, and we can keep just pointing out problems, but like, how do we point out solutions? And one of the things that I thought was really useful was, and we had Donnie come on to talk about agorism a couple of weeks ago, was to talk about that concept of like how you move from, because I want to talk not just about the concept of what you're trying to do, but the actual nuts and bolts of how you're executing it. Because I know the term like sapioponic is not even like a term that people really like can properly define even. But where you're basically like
that one up, but that really has nothing to do with the sovereignty.
Well, no, it doesn't have anything to do with the sovereignty, but it helps you to be able to execute it, right? Because if you can do the Martian, make your own food and use your waste and use your recycle water and do all these sorts of things, it makes it to where you're less dependent on city water or any of these other things that typically get people entangled in relationships with government that they don't want. And so I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that and what you have planned and how your big igloo geodesic dome setup is a part of all that, and how you are actually creating a place to live and a place to live free.
Yeah, thank you for that. And to step back first, I guess, to explain the term sapioponic, everybody knows hydroponic, growing with water, because that's how they grow the good weed these days. At least that's what the cool kids tell me.
Right.
And everybody knows aquaponics, right? And that's not, you would think that aqua and hydro, same thing, but specifically the distinction is that aquaponics is growing with fish. And that's where you put fish food into the fish tank and you circulate that water with the fish poop and the waste through the plants, and then it comes back, and you have a somewhat more efficient system that way. A lot of people have gotten away from that at this point. It seems like it was somewhat overhyped, in that it's rarely practical except in certain specific industrial circumstances. And in most, home cases, it's just aquaponics is way more trouble than it's worth. But semantically and based on these concepts, what I did here, or what I'm building here for the first fully self-sustaining off-grid home that we're building, is a slight evolution of the Earthship concept developed by Mike Reynolds with his company that owns that term by government standards. Unfortunately, Earthship is copyrighted. It should be open source because it would be so much more beautifully applicable, but you got to give Mike Reynolds the credit for developing this thing. And it is a concept for a fully self-sustaining off-grid home built primarily from upcycled materials, tires, bottles, cans, of course, use cement, plaster, standard roofing material, glass, interior finishes, solar, all that stuff, whatever you want. And with water collection off the roof and water recycling, the planter system that he developed is basically a gray water recirculating planter, because it collects all the rainwater and then it filters it, pressurizes it for your faucets. The gray water waste goes to the planter on the south side of the house where you have your windows, your passive solar as well. So if you set this up right for your climate, it generally requires no heating and cooling when you've got the solar or the thermal mass and the passive solar gain, and the ventilation controls. And so he takes that gray water and runs it through the planter in the front of the house, and then that goes to the toilet, and the black water goes out to a leach field. And when I went and took the academy there, someone had already developed an example of a black water system as opposed to a gray water system, where they were actually running the toilet waste through a planter. And I thought, well, why not just put it all together? And if I may get graphic for a second here,
we've all seen The Martian.
It may not be safe for work if blaring over a loudspeaker, but no, if you take a human turd and you send it through a macerator pump like on a boat, and it's particleized and distributed through several thousand gallons of water, and then circulated in an undersoil water circulating planter system, you're not going to smell it, and it's going to be something that is easily absorbed by that planter system. So when it's really just an evolution and a clever new term for combining some concepts that Mike Reynolds and all the great people working on Earthships have developed. And to me, this is really what the American dream for me had to include taking a raw piece of land and building my own ideal home on it, and being able to support a family here in a fully self-sustainable way. And I understand that's the American dream, well, as George Carlin says, you'd have to be asleep to believe it. Different things for different people, sure. But right now, as you pointed out, where you live, as I know in Indiana, Marcus, right across the street from a church, there are certain impracticalities with operating a sovereign border across, what do you have, like an acre lot?
It's not even an acre. It's like a quarter acre.
Yeah, well, you can still, and you can go a long ways, even in that environment. I mean, I have a great book called Mini Farming on Less Than 1/8 of an Acre. And if you're smart about it, you can support a family with the food that you can grow in that small of a space.
And we're certainly doing some of that. Our garden this year has gotten quite large, largely due to Amber. She's got the green thumb. I just basically go out and till and do the hard shit.
You're the mule.
Yeah, right. But we are doing what we can to that level. So
yeah, so it's kind of an interesting intersection of historical and technological and social arcs that we find ourselves in right now, where if you live a mainstream modern lifestyle of consumerism in America, by your consumerism, by living on grid, by paying property taxes, by burning a lot of gas, all the other ways you interact with businesses that are registered with the government, that are corporations, that are government granted privileged economic operations that therefore must pay their tribute and taxes to the government, or even just using the US dollar when you don't have to, when you can be doing barter or metals or cryptos. You are really contributing to the evil of the system in a way that right now the arc of technology is such that with not a lot of effort, your survival rate doesn't go down by saying, I am going to grow my own food. In fact, it goes up. You know, and it would be funny if, you know, maybe technology was 30 years ahead, right? And you could order a greenhouse in a box or a 3D food printer and all this talk about gardening and water and solar power and thermal mass. Maybe, oh, that's maybe like right around the corner where we're all going to have body suits, you know, that, you know, they're able to, like, they got 3D printers built into them. They like suck the molecules out of the air and print food into your mouth, or, you know, drugs for medicine, or they control your temperature and water. And, you know, maybe you see, I might be getting a little ahead of ourselves there. Yes, I'm
Just
getting
depends on how far ahead. It just depends on how far ahead things actually get, you know, because I think it's terribly feasible for that to actually eventually one day be the case.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the point today where the technology makes it feasible for you to say, well, you know what? I don't want to be a part of that evil system. I don't want to contribute to it materially in violation of agorist principles, because I'm contributing materially through taxes by interacting economically with the system. My effort that is getting exchanged into that violent economy is a contributing life force that I don't want to give it. And when you opt out, you know the saying, when seconds count, the police are just minutes away. Well, I live down 3 miles of private dirt road. When seconds count, the police might be an hour away, right? Okay, it's not that bad out here. When they do need to respond, it's about 15 minutes. But it's not like people are, you know, at each other's throats out here in lawless country. No, it's
Anarchy.
It's pretty darn peaceful out here, you know, and I love it. And there's something about, you know, the Lockean concept too of claiming land. And, you know, we could go a bunch of different ways with this conversation now if you want, but if you mix your labor with the soil or natural resources and you own the product of your labor, then it becomes yours. But to what degree, right? And this is something that a lot of libertarians miss in their analysis of property rights, and understanding that to a certain extent, property rights outside of your body are subjective. Because, and here's the now, and I'm not saying like, yeah, we operate in a framework where it's pretty objective, but you have to acknowledge where it gets subjective.
Yeah,
and
it requires a certain amount of like mutual respect.
Here's the perfect example, Chad. It's very easy to communicate this to someone who's never even considered the point.
Mm-hmm.
if I put up a fence right here, as I did, around 10 acres, and I say, this is mine, this is my homestead. I'm gonna have a few people living here, I'm gonna have a family here, I'm gonna use it. I can see the whole property. I fenced it all in. I can say I have plans for it. It's a decent little privacy buffer, but it's not much more than that. But I can say, you know, have I mixed my labor with every part of the soil
Right.
here? Of course not.
Right.
So, but you generally, society says it's not appropriate for someone to come squat on the one corner of my 10 acres where I haven't built anything yet, right? Conversely, if I were to go to Wyoming and put up a fence around 1 million acres and say, haha, screw you, I put up a fence around it, I own this whole thing, now you have to buy it from me, and if you try to squat here, I'm gonna shoot you.
Right.
I would not recognize that as legitimately creating a property claim by having mixed your labor with the soil because you put
Right.
up a fence around 1 million acres. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of the premise of government. And I'll let you guys go.
And well, and by the same token, I think you would be the type of, just because of what I know about you from just knowing you for 2.5, 3 years, that should a squatter find themselves on like the back corner of one of your 10 acres or something like that, and you found them there, your response would not be, oh, good thing I brought this strap because I'm about to peel this cap back. No, you'd be like, hey man, are you okay? Do you need some water? You know, can I help you?
Yeah, of course.
No, that sort of thing. And that's where, again, I think, because we were having this discussion this weekend at the convention in Orlando, and there were, I mean, there's all sorts, all types. And I even had like an Antifa, like, you know, rent is theft, property is theft kind of person riding with me to Orlando. And there were some interesting discussions there. But what we talked about was, I think sometimes it's really easy to get trapped in the mentality that the state has put us in relative to this conversation, and to not think in terms of a stateless society where we are actually free to do exactly what you're talking about, do what you're doing, and where you don't have to bargain with the state to just leave you alone enough that you can just pay your foreign aid, you know, in the amount that property taxes would normally be. In that type of world where we actually are free, those types of scenarios don't carry that same energy in the same way that a lot of these like cop and person that gets pulled over on the side of the road interactions, they come with a certain charged amount of energy because of past history and everything. Cops are expecting something, the person in the car is expecting something, and those expectations create tension. And that type of environment, when you have an expectation that people are going to move and act ethically, and that the state, which is so pervasive and is such the scales don't even come off the ground, it's so tilted in violence that is committed by the state, and that is perpetuated by the state, that we need to like allow ourselves the mental freedom to say, okay, let's really think about this whole property rights question in the landscape of where we're actually free and the state isn't dictating this stuff, which then puts stress and puts pressure on people to really be protective of something like that, to where the assumption is, this dude's on my property, he must be up to no good. Instead, it comes in that form of, hey, are you looking for something? Are you looking for someone? Can I help you? Do you need some water? Do you need some
maximizing value?
Exactly. Because that's a relationship. Like, because one of the things, and it sucks that they tore it down from YouTube, that they deleted this video. There's still one copy of it, but it's not the same as the original. But the time that the Marine wanted to take you outside and beat your ass at that bar because of the speech you gave about the milluary.
Yeah,
the way you talked that.
I can't find that on my channel anymore.
No, it's not on your channel anymore. That was like one of your best like revenue generating and one of the best messaging videos for nonviolent communication that I've ever seen, and it's gone. But it's that sort of approach to things that can take what was a hostile confrontation into, hey, why would we want to fight when it's much better for us to have a productive relationship where we might be able to do business with one another? And then he's like, I'm not going to do business with you. And you're like, well, I don't know. Let's keep talking, because we, and then by the end of it, he's not necessarily wanting to do business, but he at least took a book and, was shaking your hand and saying, I think we can agree on this. But I wanted to bring Nico in, because there's some of the stuff that you were saying that Nico has actually vocalized over the last few weeks about, when you're watching Netflix, you might as well be pushing the button to drop some of those bombs and all this kind of stuff, because that's the same. So I want to let you kind of like articulate, those things that kind of go along with what Adam was talking about, how the more we participate in this, the more we're kind of tacitly contributing.
Yeah, we contribute to our demise and the funding of all the wars that just keep going on. Granted, there's things overseas that also start the wars, but like, oh no, we keep funding this government for them to keep doing vile things, and we just like do it with ignorance, and like it's willful ignorance on a lot of people's parts, because they know that like, hey, why are the government taxing me? It's COVID taxes out here. Like some of these stores were charging COVID taxes out here. Like, I mean,
hey, you can't even say COVID on YouTube anymore without having to check a box and having your video go through a different algorithm to deprioritize it.
Oh, but
It's
I just shot
specific
myself in the
current
foot.
controversial topic. You can't.
I most definitely forgot about that. Oof.
Don't worry about it.
We're going to talk about plenty of stuff. I'm not saying don't talk about it. I'm just saying it's like you're pointing out that it's just another excuse to screw with everybody.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Well, we're all COVID.
Yeah, and it's necessary.
It's not just dangerous to your health. It's so dangerous that we're the only ones who can talk about it.
So do you want to hear a funny story?
Right.
Today, the Louisiana Department of Health posted on Twitter, I'll send you the link when we're done with this, where if you went to LSU's baseball stadium and got tested today, they gave you a free coupon for a value meal at McDonald's. When you think it's about health, you got another thing coming.
That's hilarious.
I'm not even fucking bullshit.
Yeah, let's put some mucus in your
Only in
system.
America.
The Department of Health. It's like,
only in America could you have a population eating, smoking, drinking, and sitting itself to death with chronic diseases turn around and freak out because government wants to blame a virus. And even if everything they say about it is true, the scale of the death is just compared to heart disease and chronic health related issues, and it's just like
Yeah.
I don't have a big enough red, white, and blue face palm for this.
Right.
There, I think that's red, white, and blue. You're sure it is.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's truly unfortunate. We just
It's me hiding behind the flag.
go along with it.
Well, it's like we saw somebody with a thin blue line bumper sticker on the way to Orlando, and right next to it is a Molon Labe sticker. And it's like, who the fuck you think's gonna Molon Labe?
Hold on, Chad. I gotta come to the defense of that other driver here, just to make this other point. A lot of people put the thin blue line stickers on their vehicles as cop repellent, or to change that situation. I
did that for a while with the Fraternal Order of Police sticker that you give them like $10, and it's like they're less likely to like give you a ticket, that kind of thing. So I
not
get
just that, Chad.
Yeah.
Like you pointed out earlier, that every cop interaction in America carries that inherent hostility. Well, guess what?
Good point. Yeah.
They're less likely to shoot you in the face because you have a thin blue line sticker on your car.
For sure. And historically, we've done that. I mean, the colonists that weren't Tories. They weren't out there, saying, "Oh, I'm fighting for the revolution." Fuck no. They were like, "Woo, go Britain!"
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, to a degree, we're the dumb ones because we're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I got a big
Instead of,
freedom sticker, libertarian sticker all over the back of my car."
what we do is we let agents in the LP instead of us being LP folks working for the FBI to fuck the FBI from within. we let them in to ruin our shit. Oh yeah, I don't even,
it's starting to
we
get
are
close
our
to
own worst enemy.
the time that we had scheduled Adam to be on here. Generally, Adam, we go for 2 hours, but I just scheduled you for an hour. And yet, if you want to,
If you got more time, we can have you on longer if you want.
Yeah, I mean, let's make sure we get a full hour out of this at least. And go
I had 2 questions for Adam. The first one was, can you expand your territory like anymore, or is it just land that you purchase and own? And like with the agreement with other people, like, hey, I got something free over here. You just want to join? Or is there like stipulations that you have to necessarily go through hoops and rings?
Just buy more land, right?
Well,
Yeah.
actually, our expansion plan for Gardenia is to invade Canada and take over. I think with the force that we're going to be able to muster with our resources here in Gardenia, that should be a fun weekend project. No, if I were to buy more land and it was, my property, then I would by decree assimilate it into Gardenia and file, appropriate notices parallel to our Declaration of Independence with, the appropriate government agencies within the U.S. government in different levels, and say, hey, this territory as well, we expect you to treat it like the rest of Gardenia. But in terms of property owned by someone else other than myself and my wife, or my immediate family, whoever I decide under my monarchy to share my property with, in that sense, to give them that claim, I wouldn't want to be claiming governance over territory that I don't own outright. And I certainly respect if someone says, Adam, please rule me, I'm your neighbor, just say that Gardenia is this 10 acres over here too. I'd be like, no, that's go rule yourself.
Right.
You're kind of missing the point here.
I don't need slaves.
What's that?
I don't need slaves.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if they wanted to give me land and say, please claim this as part of Gardenia, it's yours, you do what you want with it, and that would be different. But a big part of the United Nations of Freedom is to encourage not just other nations to embrace the ethical principles of freedom, but to encourage other people to form new countries as well. So we're getting a little ahead of things, but it might be called the Micronation Project. Yeah. And the idea is to encourage other people to do their own version of this and claim sovereignty on land that they own.
And at least on like a specialization theoretical basis, like it would be better to have whoever that is kind of like you figure out how to do, because shit, you might come up with something better than what I have, and then I might be able to learn from you. But if you're just telling me, hey, do your thing over here, then I'm not getting to learn from your innovation, because there's a lot of that. We were talking about like this unemployment and some of the stuff that's going on right now with all the extra, the Donald dollars and everything, that it's actually keeping some people, even though this sucks and this has been forced on people, the unemployment and everything else, it's been very destructive. By the same token, the destruction is not helped by giving people money that keeps them from having that resourcefulness kind of activated by desperation, so to speak, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily a good thing, but like in some cases, like people people are like, that I lost my job, and that's when I started my own, online business or whatever. And it's something that they probably could have done 15 years ago, but their job kind of kept them going. It kept them from doing that because they were too tied to not wanting to lose that. And so in that sense, that's kind of the comparison that I was making to, if someone's depending on you and your territory to expand to theirs so that they can kind of benefit from what you do and what you have to offer. It's like, no, just like, if you want to come over and look at what I have and learn from it, and then you can try to employ that, and maybe we can work something out where we can barter and I can help you set it up. That's cool. But like, it'd be really cool if you learned your own way of doing it that fits you, so that then we can learn from each other. We can benefit from each other. You may make shit that I can't make, that then now that barter is actually possible. If we both make the same thing, why the hell am I going to trade you for the same thing? It doesn't make any sense. So I kind of enjoy that specialization, that innovation, and we're so unique, beautiful people. I think the term snowflake is like one of the worst Orwellian hijackings of all time. A snowflake should mean like our uniqueness, not like our ability to melt when people say bad things and trigger us.
Yeah, right. Chad, if I may go back to a point there, man, you raised a really interesting dilemma for the libertarian analysis here, right? Because definitely I see the benefit in the sort of silver lining of this economic
crisis. Not fucking
crisis,
people
right?
over completely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's motivating people to seek black market, under the table, more agorist, off the record businesses, to do all of those things that assert economic independence from the government, and many times from the dollar system itself, and that is absolutely huge. And what your point is that the government assistance is kind of slowing that down after we've been forced into this unemployment crisis. And there's sort of like a humane analysis fighting with the libertarian analysis here, right?
Right.
But I think you have to sort of turn that on its head and say, yeah, the government is using these payments to string people along to stay in the white market.
Yes.
To stay on Team America, as in the team government, right? Just to stay in that mainstream lifestyle. Just hold on. Keep going to those food banks. We'll get you another $1,200 a year eventually. Unemployment relief is coming. It's okay.
Yeah, stay on unemployment, because your startup isn't going to make real money until 6 months from now, and that unemployment just keeps coming in. So
it hasn't really been said in this term enough, but by putting a moratorium on evictions, they socialized housing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh crap. And like, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a moratorium on eviction. The market would probably provide us with insurance, a way more effective moratorium on evictions. Because it would be real emergency rent relief.
Right.
We wouldn't be relying on government for this sort of thing. We'd have a much better cooperative system.
Well, and the other thing too, the flip side of that is you go to like 08, 09 and that crisis, and some of this stuff where, these banks loaned a bunch of money to people who couldn't afford to pay it back, and then the bank's going to go belly up. Okay, sorry, sucks for you. Shouldn't have fucking done that. And if these people get to keep their house as a result,
Chad,
then
are you suggesting that bankers
may have been the prime beneficiary of all the bailouts?
Responsible for something? Are you? No. This is America. That's how we defeat the entire purpose of being a banker.
No,
like
right?
Government means never having to say you're sorry. But no, I got to finish this point about the relief. And I have said for a long time, if you can take money from government at the level of any kind of individual welfare or benefit or hurt, whatever it is, in a way that doesn't encourage government to steal more money, not only should you do it and take advantage of that opportunity, you have a kind of moral obligation to do it, Because if you don't, the government is going to use that money to hurt people and reduce your freedom. Why make it easy for them?
For sure.
Why? So I want, like, what I'm hoping in a sense is, yes, the government, in order to think it's keeping its thing going, it has to shove all this money down the pipeline, and it's still going to get everybody going. This isn't as good as it was when I was actually earning an income. Let me develop something else. And you can give people the encouragement for that transition without pulling the rug out from underneath them, without the inhumane consequences.
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely a very nuanced topic. It's not just like it's $1,200 bad, $0 good. But it's also not $1,200 awesome and $0 has no benefit whatsoever. There's an argument for both sides of that. But yeah, certainly it brings that humane versus that that real motivation from like the bottom, hitting bottom and having to actually figure out like, what the fuck am I going to do? Okay, now let me kick my ideas into high gear instead of being lulled to sleep and sedated by the dependence on the system that is built to basically make slaves of us all.
Well, if I may, that takes us back to this concept of property rights, as we were discussing earlier, where a lot of libertarians, baby libertarians who are new to this, get hung up on property rights and gun rights. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Do you even have a gun right? No, you have a property right. You have a right to own whatever piece of metal in whatever shape you want. I have no right to tell you otherwise. You have the right to ban guns on your property and tell people they can't bring them on. And this gets to the whole, like you were talking about, if someone squatted on my property here, if I woke up one morning and there was someone just sitting in the field next to where I've got my bus parked right now, and they were just camping out. Yeah, I'm not going in. Oh, I have an excuse to shoot someone.
Right.
No, I go, okay. Well, as the property owner, I've suffered a minor violation that essentially cost me nothing. But right now it was annoying me and is preventing the full enjoyment of my property. But more importantly, someone appears to be lost in the middle of nowhere.
Maybe
I'm going to help them out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the purpose of this, and there are lots of examples like, and Stefan Molyneux, who I learned a lot from philosophically back when he was more consistent in his application of principles, let's just say. And one of his examples is, if you are, dangling off the edge of a building for whatever reason, and you're losing your grip, do you have the right to break a stranger's window to break into their apartment to save your own life? Well, duh, that's what should happen, right? Yeah, you're going to do that. And there's a whole other level of calculation that's not, well, I can't violate someone else's property because he owns it. No, then you can never give someone the Heimlich maneuver, right? It's kind of silly. But no, you break the window, you pay for it because it's worth paying and taking responsibility for the window to save your own life.
Right. And the contrast to that is the people in the current paradigm of the state, they actually think in the opposite terms. They actually think in terms of like that squatter on your property when you wake up in the morning. They think, well, legally, I'm within my rights to kill this person because they're on my. That's why you had this thing with this couple in St. Louis that they were pointing guns at the protesters and everything.
Ken and Karen,
and
lawyers.
Right. Ken and Karen. Yeah. So there were people arguing like, no, they have a right to shoot those people because they're on. And it's like that's where we are. We're at the point where we're just going to talk about this through the lens of what we could get away with in court instead of what's
right
ethical.
To shoot yourself in the face.
Right. It's still not a good idea. Anyway, go ahead, Marcus.
A couple things. First of all, I agree with just about everything you guys said, but one of the things that continues to reoccur to me while we're going through a lot of these ideas, and I agree, obviously, in a sane world, in Ethics of Liberty, Rothbard talked at length about the kinds of examples like we're talking about. He called them, I think, like rowboat examples or something like that, where it's just, you're always going to find some exception to the norm. and that is going to be awful, and libertarianism doesn't work because one guy decided to be a dick. Obviously, that's not the case. But one of the things that I think we as libertarians miss sometimes in all of this conversation is the fact that we really don't know how all of this comes into play. Because like Konkin said, we have for thousands of years had the reality of statism pounded into us, and we just assume that's the way it is. So we really don't know what kind of world we look at when we don't have force, coercion, and violence in our lives on a daily basis. So I think,
Margaret,
yeah,
go ahead.
No,
Well, no, just to emphasize that, you know, when I asked earlier, which is like the start of this whole idea chain for me, like, you know, you look around the world, what's the greatest source of violence? And any honest assessment, you have to look at the world and go, 90+% of the violence in the world is done in the name of government. If you count the effects of government violence versus the effects of individual or sort of non-government, like if you add up how much of the economy is moved by all, or how much value is destroyed by all individual or non-government violence, including gangs, so it's not individuals with, you know, mafia, organized crime, whatever. All of that is insignificant compared to what is stolen by governments through taxation, the rights that are violated with traffic stops every single day, property rights not being respected. And even if you don't take that more inclusive analysis, if you just look at like murder, if you just look at death, you know, and you know, if you look at, you know, actual acts of violence, still, again, even that, well, if you do it that way, it's 90%. If you do it the other way, it's like 99.9% already of the destructive force value of violence in the world is from violence done or coercion committed in the name of governments. And people ask the question, like to what you said, Marcus, well, what are we going to do about, you know, robberies without the police? It's like, well, what do you do about it now? The police show up and write a report. You can hire someone else to come and write a report who's not going to tax you to do it. Like, you can come up, really?
And,
Like,
and isn't going to possibly shoot your dog and shoot you because they got the shit wrong in the first
yeah,
place. Yeah, and so, and I would even argue that domestic violence and gang violence and some of the other things that are quote unquote not government are actually induced by the stress,
right?
The laws and everything else,
the war on poverty,
the black market, but even like the stuff with like domestic violence. Like I would argue that there's probably a lot of that it's like from the stress of having to work 2 jobs and like having to make ends meet and not being able to, and most of the fights are over money. And you're stressed out already. You're exhausted. You're tired. It's I think it's people don't even really like pull into like the full scope. That's what I was saying. Like we have to kind of like allow ourselves to imagine, you know, what does all this stuff really look like without that constant like foot on your neck.
Even a cursory or superficial application of libertarian principles, like even if just Joe Jorgensen won the presidency and transformed the federal government of the United States, and in 4 years just managed to get rid of a few of the major chunks of the evil effects of the federal government, it would be so fundamentally transformative, along with all of the other technological advances that we're experiencing right now, that you can't even imagine. What would society, if 90% of the world's violence is done in the name of governments, get rid of it. What would, if you just got rid of that, how transformative would that be? How many, it's like right now, here's a good way of thinking, because right, you've heard the saying, a fish does not notice the water it swims in, right? And as libertarians, we like to point out, yeah, statist does not, does not notice, is not aware of the oppressive effects of government that it lives with, right? Yeah. And you come out here, like just to get back to Gardenia, you come out here where the police are pretty far away, you know, and people really do respect individual rights. And it's, you feel a little bit of that cloud thinning. It's not gone, but the cloud of government over society is thinner the further away you get from the mechanisms and the direct reach of the state. But to compare it to something that everybody can understand, there's a similar difference between how things felt 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Crap. Every day seems like a week trying to keep up with the headlines now.
Yeah, it's about 5 weeks now.
But yeah, 5 months. You just
I'll be
want to say
5
you want
months,
to go
yeah.
back to like clearly pre-corona. There is a cloud over America, and most countries whose governments are playing into this one way or another, right? Not everywhere. It's not the same everywhere in the world. But certainly in the United States, it is a heavy, dark, stinking cloud that we are all keenly aware of because it's new and it's novel, like the virus which shall not be named, lest we must check the box with YouTube to flag this video, right? And by the way, we're talking about a virus that has a lower fatality rate than trying to spend a counterfeit $20 bill in Minneapolis. Is that a dark joke? I'm sorry. A lower fatality rate than testifying against Hillary Clinton. Crap. Anytime I mention her name, I have to say I am not now, nor have I ever been suicidal. Anyway, yeah, we notice that extra layer of cloud darkening right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
How bad? And just for a second here, if you guys will indulge me, how bad? If you just scale of stinking dark cloud reducing quality of life. How bad were things, and how much worse did Corona make it? Like what scale did it go? Like if pre-Corona government was 100% bad, did it go up to 200%? Did it go up to 2,000%? Did it go up 5%?
Yeah, I don't know either. And the problem is, I don't know that we're ever really going to be able to get that metric, because a lot of the shit.
I'm asking for you guys subjectively.
Okay.
Yeah, subjectively, it's like the difference between Arizona humidity and South Florida or South Louisiana humidity.
So you think it's that much worse? Because
Wet
I
or
don't
dry
think it's
heat?
that much.
I think it's worse in the sense that like there is more. I have not seen the level of like snitching and like people kind of looking over their shoulders like all the time. Like, there's that normal, like you're driving down the highway, you're not even driving over the speed limit. In Marcus's case, you're driving the speed limit. You get pulled over for driving too slow. And he's like, what fucking speed am I supposed to drive? I'm driving the speed limit. I can't drive faster than that because you give me a ticket for that. You said I can't drive this slow. I have to drive faster than that, or you'll give me a ticket for going too slow. What speed do I drive? Anyway, where you drive next to a cop and you just kind of like, oh fuck, am I doing something wrong? That sort of thing. This is like on a whole, like you're walking by the cashier at Walmart and it's like, oh shit, you know, am I doing something? It's the level of, I feel like there's a we're like much more into the but that's why I said it's Arizona humidity versus it's still fucking hot in Arizona.
It's
okay.
So it's a little.
It's just more humid.
So it is a little more in your face, right? Coronavirus lockdowns are a little more in your face, not just because they're new, but in terms of the nature of government. But really, if you could choose one or the other, every American stops paying the income tax, or every American has to wear a mask just in public. I'd get rid of the income tax, not the mask law.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, the mask thing's unenforceable, right? You know that.
Right.
If you're not wearing a mask, you know, I have a health condition that makes it difficult, and you can't ask me because of HIPAA. Screw you, right? And stores are posting, this is their policy now. If you come in without a mask, we're going to assume that it's because of a medical condition, and we're just not going to ask, and we welcome your business. My point is, if you're kind of new to looking at government, if before the Corona lockdowns and shutdowns and states of emergency, you never took the time that a libertarian does to look at government, you go, oh wow, all this new stuff, wow, this really sucks, it's really affecting me. And it's a cloud that's more visible, but in terms of the actual oppressive effects compared to what we had before that, of, you know, a complete duopoly rule system, of basically a completely corrupt government monetary system, a police state, a surveillance state, a government run by the military industrial complex. Having to wear masks, you know, not that bad. It's the unemployment crisis, really.
Oh, no, that's what I was gonna say. It's the small business shakedown
That's more significant.
But
But I wouldn't say it's more than 50% worse by the most generous assessment. And you go, okay, so you know, how much better is it going to be when things get back to how they were 5 months ago compared to how they are now?
Yeah,
well,
not
guess
that
what?
much better.
We can, if it's 150% now, or, you know, 50% worse, than if government is now 50% more in your face and evil and destructive than it used to be. Well, guess what? We get rid of this 50%, we can get rid of another 50 and another 50. And can you imagine how that would feel like?
right.
It would start to feel like freedom, like what it feels like, the difference being here and living like this than living in a city where all of these experiences of government are in your face all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Nico,
for sure.
you
One
have-
of the things that I said early on was the COVID managed to show me in like my feeds on Facebook and Twitter who all the assholes are going to turn me in on. For me, I just, okay, bye. You know?
It's a giant public IQ test, and if you're wearing a mask while driving, I'm sorry, you failed. And you know, there's a lot of it's really funny how it's served as a sorting device that way, Marcus. Yes, it's been quite illuminating of some dividing lines that we didn't know we wanted to look at. But hey, now
there's some people I lost a lot of respect for. Yeah,
and it's a certain. It's not. I don't want to demean the humanity or even the intelligence of people who have fallen for this, because it's not really an IQ test. I want to just put a slightly finer point on that and say
the driving with a mask thing is, though.
Well, okay, no, but you know, it's because there are plenty of smart people who do stupid things all the time, but it's people who don't question enough.
For sure.
They are a danger to everyone.
No, intellectual curiosity has gone way down.
There was never a Hitler, a Pol Pot, a Mao, a Stalin, or even a Darth Vader without his stormtroopers. And if you're going to be one of those people, you are a threat to everyone. Yeah. And with that being said, gentlemen, I really do need to take off. I really appreciate you hanging with me through being late and the technical difficulties today. But man, and if I may just say in signing off one thing for anybody who's enjoyed this conversation, please join us for Adam versus the Man. I am live Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. We are going on August 1st, a patron only via YouTube, which is a funny little quirk of the internet that allows us to do a censorship-free space without worrying about YouTube community guidelines and all that other censorship nonsense. So, but also for what Marcus and Nico and Chad are doing, you know, please support them in this. Support independent media. Share this video. Share this interview, however you're getting it. And because we don't have corporate sponsorship to compete with the mainstream media, in order to fully realize the potential of this wonderful technology that we all have now, we need active, engaged audiences. I'm so grateful that you guys decided to share yours with mine today, and for the one that keeps me going. So I hope you'll put your money and your clicks where your eyes and ears are, and support independent media like this with Aquarian Anarchy and whatever information is important to you. My last plug, my book, Freedom, the Bible of Freedom. Everything you need to know in just 100 pages is free in every digital format possible at thefreedomline.com. I know Marcus has got you covered in the links. One other quick plug, since Chad mentioned it earlier, our other business, Big Igloo Geodesics, you can find at Big Igloo Geodesics on Instagram, and Gardenia. That's really where we post the most, and I would appreciate it if everybody follow us there specifically. It's a fun visual project at the Garden of Freedom on Instagram. And yeah, we got the gardenofreedom.com too. So with that, as I always sign off, Mwah, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness and be excellent to each other.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam, and appreciate you coming
All
on,
right.
man. Have a good one. And tell Sam we said hi.
Yes, definitely. Send her our love.
So
So,
that was awesome.
yeah, that was really good. Yeah, I got nervous there. I was like, damn, man, we got like 6 minutes into this thing, and his thing went down. But that was really good. I tried to get your second question back in, Nico, but
Me too.
like, Nico, did you still have a second? And it was,
Yeah, no, I did. It was about armies. Like, could he get like an army on his land and like?
oh yeah. Well, I mean, he's gonna be his own army, I guess.
I
With
to a
whoever
degree,
was there.
Derek Bros covered this. There's an old time anarchist that had literally in like the early 1900s had a anarchist army. They established what would eventually be the Soviet Union, an anarchist area. I can't call it a state, but it was an anarchist area, and they had what they called the Black Army. And Derek Rose covered it to a degree. At some point, we might think about whether we need an anarchist army. And this is just basically if we decide that we're, going with Adam's idea that we have these areas that are sovereign, we agree to kind of protect each other and defend.
Right. Well, so you had something sort of like this. And I mean, it kind of sucked the way that whole thing ended up going down. But the CHOP in Seattle, where they're handing out guns and stuff, and they're arming up, and like they're like, we don't need the police. We're our own police. We got this. Like now. Does that mean that like if communist China or the U.S. U.S. Army or whatever, decided they wanted to just come and carpet bomb the place, that they'd be able to really defend themselves with like surface to air missiles and stuff or anything like that? Well, no, obviously not. But I think to a large degree, every time, because that's one of the things that comes up a lot with people. Like, well, yeah, but what if China just wanted? What if we did dissolve the federal government? Then we didn't have an army, and it was just like militias and all this stuff. And then China came and they wanted to take over. I'm like, well, they'd have to like work their asses off to take the previously most powerful military on the planet that we just said, no, thank you. We got this ourselves. They would have to take the people who said that on one-on-one in the trenches.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just have to like nuke the place and render it useless. And so what's the point at that point? So if you look at like how we have dealt with, how the U.S. military has dealt with whether it was Afghanistan or Vietnam or Iraq or any of these places where we have gone and we've met with like an insurgency who says, get the fuck out of my backyard. I don't want you here. Leave me alone. They kill you. Like they like fight back, and it's not like this, we want to take over, therefore here we are and we took over. No, those people are like, the hell you are, and they shoot you.
Right.
So
what is it though? There was a point though of like, what about scenarios? So like, granted, you hear me?
Yeah, you just kind of, it like froze up for a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Are we good now?
Yeah.
All right. So what about like foreign affairs now? We also said that since we're the 50 United States and we want to take care of our own little business, and we want to fix up and patch up the states, what about like if there was something happening, and then would we have people like at board meetings and agreeing like, yeah, we want to go over there and help? Because at the end of the day, when we dissolve it and there's no more soldiers, the soldiers are going back home. It's not like we're booting them off somewhere. They're coming back home.
No, they're just going to be at home to defend their own property and to be there with their families and not have their wives cheat on them and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
For sure. And Nico, so that you are aware, and I know to a degree you're aware of the Articles of Confederation, that's kind of how that worked out. They just kind of agreed to like mutually help each other, under their own deal. You would, like, for instance, it would make sense, like, let's say we dissolve it back down to Indiana. Okay, it would make sense that I'm looking over to my friend Nico up in Chicago and being like, hey man, you need to get your boys together. We got some shit going on. China done whooped Ohio's ass, and you can bet they're going to come through Indiana and get Illinois. So why don't you help our asses out and block their asses in? And that kind of thing would definitely happen, because that's self-serving.
And if it was something overseas where, say, France is invading Spain and Spain is like, hey, we need some help over here. Well, they got to hire some people. That's what it's going to have to come down to. They're going to either have to hire people or they're going to have some people volunteer to go over there. But it's not going to be this bullshit where George Bush says, hey, I think Kuwait is stealing. I think Iraq is stealing oil from Kuwait, or no, what was it? Kuwait was stealing oil from Iraq, and then Saddam Hussein was like, "Fuck y'all are stealing our oil," and so he started fucking with them, and so then George Bush was like, "Hey, we can't let this happen. We got to go help them." Haha, help them, aka that's our fucking oil. that's our oil. We will carpet bomb their asses and turn sand into glass. Because that's how freedom works. Damn it. No, I mean that's a whole different thing, because George Bush wasn't and I'm talking about HW, and then W like followed suit with him, but HW was not the one volunteering to go over there and man a post. He said we need to go over there, and the Colin Powell and the whole the Pentagon and everything was like, yeah, that's a great idea. There's lots of resources over there that we could steal. So let's send a bunch of, 17 to 25-year-olds over there and let them just die and murder people. And, we'll get whatever comes out of that. It's a completely different ball game from being requested to help and then volunteering to go over and help. And that would be done more on an individual or on like if a group, like a little battalion, a little militia from South Carolina says, yeah, you know what? They asked for help. And so, I called my homie over there in Iraq, or they put the number up on YouTube when they made their little request video. And I called him up and I said, hey, man, we got 30 of us. We'll come over there and help y'all. That's how that sort of thing, I think. And it, like Marcus was saying, one of the biggest things, and Jeff Deist said this beautifully. He said, libertarians, like people who think like us, we don't claim to have all the answers of how all of these things would work themselves out.
Right.
The central planners are the one with the hubris who think they can plan everything out and that they know the best way for everything to happen. We just recognize that they fucking suck at working things out without bloodshed and theft and oppression. And we just think that if we removed the bloodshed, the theft, and the oppression, that human beings can work things out, and it's bound to be better than the shit that we have now. Because it's always funny, like, well, yeah, but how are we gonna do this? What if somebody steals something? Then people are gonna steal stuff. I'm like, oh, that's right. God, I didn't even think about that, because nobody steals stuff now. Right. Thank God we have government, and it prevents all theft. Well, like everything that they're afraid of is the shit that's already happening.
And plus, on top of that, let's put just take it outside of it, because you're right, Chad. But take it outside of the high-ended things, okay? The high-minded, understanding, the libertarian. When people are like, oh, this dissolving the federal government thing, that'll never work. Have they never fucking looked at a map? Have they ever looked at how big Britain is?
Right.
It's not like we're talking about
Luxembourg.
Right.
Luxembourg is like one of the they're like Gardenia on like a massive scale. They're like, you can't come over here.
Right.
And Liechtenstein is another one. Liechtenstein is like really, really they're really strict on like who can come in. You have to like learn the language and all this kind of stuff before you come in. It's very restrictive, but it's done on purpose because it's like this tiny little sliver that they're just like, look, we do us, and y'all ain't got to come over here. It's like this is our house, and you don't need to be here unless you want to like really be here and show us a little bit of respect.
Plus, it's a fallacy. It's a fallacy to think that my neighbor, the only thing keeping my neighbor from coming into my house
And
is
murdering
the
you.
fact that there's a cop in town. That's bullshit.
Right,
That is
right.
absolute
Right.
bullshit.
The
He's
same
not coming over
neighbor,
to another
who you can
gas.
borrow a cup of sugar from tomorrow if you need it.
Right.
Is really waiting for the cops to not be there so he can steal your house from you.
Right. Good luck.
Right.
So one thing I want to, before we kind of wrap this up, and because we are getting on to 10 o'clock, I do want to say, Nico, I enjoy your input. Let's up it up, man. You're competing with Chad and I. You got.
Yeah, well,
I'm
and
sorry.
Adam is
sorry.
Adam's another whole competition
Yeah.
we have to deal with there. So it's,
I was just I was absorbing as much as possible because I'm ignorant in this realm, and so.
But I don't think you are. One of the things my wife and I talked about you this past weekend.
What's that?
I said I disagree with him. I don't think he's ignorant. I think he might be young.
Yeah.
Nico, you're young, and that's fantastic. My wife and I were talking about this very thing. You're 22, right? And you're being influenced right now by some hardcore anarchists. You are being influenced today by me, Chad, and Adam motherfucking Kokesh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, to put that in perspective,
imagine.
I didn't even come to this stuff until I was like 35.
Right.
So, or 34 maybe, something like that.
Yeah,
So,
just keep thinking, keep moving, and keep getting yourself understanding. You're going to learn from us your version of whatever the fuck you wind up doing and believing and all that shit, because I'll believe something else next week. You can guarantee that, because I always grow. But whatever you get to, when you've started at 22, putting this shit together with your brain and with, because I already can tell
and
you
your
are a very intelligent person. By the time you put all this shit together, goddamn, by the time you are
our age,
government's going to piss themselves by the time you're our age. or you're going to have a mind for freedom that we won't be able to touch. That's where I'm at with it.
I appreciate
and
I
am beginning the I began the work this weekend of being the architect of the Hotep takeover of the Libertarian Party.
Oh.
So we're gonna need an Illinois delegate or two.
For sure.
No. So like really, what I want to see like 50 like Hotep or Hotep adjacent black delegates in the convention in 2022 or 2024, one of those two. And I want us to be be in the Mises caucus, and have the Hotep caucus, but then also like aligned with the Mises people, because that's where like Eric July and Maj Touré, that's where their stuff is. And did you watch the Eric July interview with Hotep Jesus?
Yeah.
So like Eric is like real good friends with a lot of the Mises folks and everything. So what's funny about it is that like I'm trying to make this thing happen because I think it's like a perfect alliance, because the ideas are the same. It's about building your own shit and promoting, and there's nothing wrong with like promoting people who want to like build black businesses and build black wealth. Like that's perfectly like in line with everything. And so to bring that into the LP, but bring it into a caucus that the only thing that everybody else says about it, to try to destroy it, to try to undermine it, because there are people who like actively try to fuck things up. And this particular caucus is the biggest recruiting vehicle for the whole party. They always call them racist. And Eric July is part of it. And they even call him like a white supremacist or a white supremacist apologist or whatever. And it's like, y'all are fucking retarded, man. You're just like, you're trying to tell black people how they can think, and then you're trying to like tell them, like, I'm like, I want to have black people there so that they can speak for themselves, so that you don't have a bunch of white people in a party telling people what black people's issues are.
Correct.
That's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I like the idea, Chad, and I'm 100% behind you, as you know. But one of the things I had an epiphany. Sorry, it's a little off topic, but I gotta get it out while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
I had an epiphany based on some things Donnie said this weekend, and he was talking about how Conkin pointed out.
Yeah, the hamster wheel.
Yeah,
I was thinking about that shit all weekend too. It was fucking with my head, man. I was like, I don't know.
So Conkin said that the Libertarian Party is more or less controlled opposition. That it gives people like us a place where we can go bitch, but it's not actually going to do anything. I think that's true. I think that is absolutely, whether it was set up that way or not, that's what it's become. What is happening right now is the real people like us, whether they're minarchists, anarchists, constitutionalists, whatever the fuck they are, the real people are starting to go, no, let's take this motherfucker. It was controlled opposition. What they're fighting right now is the libertarian takeover of the Libertarian Party. They're fighting the people that aren't controlled taking over.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And I want to see people like, and I'm going to stick around. The Libertarian Party pisses me off on a daily basis, but I'm going to stick around. And the reason I'm going to stick around is because they have ballot access and they have the ability to fucking hammer them pieces of shit on a daily basis. So I'm going to use it.
Yeah. The other thing that the LP has that's useful is, I mean, look, for all of the other shit, and I agree, it's a big, it can be a big like energy magnet that it just like absorbs and sucks life out of you. It's also a great networking event. Like I got to meet people and connect with people, and like we're gonna do other shit that has nothing to do with the LP together too. And so that's what's great is the ability to build those kinds of relationships. Right, I met you through this whole process. And I met Nico differently, but now Nico is being kind of, brought in.
Yeah.
He chooses to participate. And you do your thing. If you don't want to, if you're like, nah, that's not my way.
No, I want to get into politics. I want to smack a few politicians.
But yeah, so that's the thing. That's what I'm seeing is that we have the potential to create, because we're Kyle and I were talking about this on the drive over. I see this whole thing as like it's a big boss fight. The state is the final boss, okay? And when you play like these online co-op games, you have like somebody's like the archer and they're like off, shooting from range. You've got like a magician who's like casting spells and making, other shit happen. You've got like a little assassin ninja type person. It's like they're quick and agile and they're like slashing the Achilles of the boss. And then you have like your big brutal, knight or whatever who's got like a big hammer or a sword or something like that. And then you have like your I don't know, somebody with fire. You have all these different ways that you can attack this boss, and you kind of need all of them. Now, can you, if you're skilled enough and you're good enough, and can you do it with only 3 of those components if the game allows for 5 co-op players? Yeah, you can do it if you're good enough. But man, it really helps if you have all 5 people, because you can distract the state over here, and then this one can be like making the state do some other shit. And so you have like agorism or agor. I've always called it agorism. Agorism. You have your activism, like your civil disobedience type stuff. You have the LP. You have media. You have like education. All of these different vehicles that all help to work to chip away at that boss until we can take him down. And so I have chosen to continue to fight this fight. I'm also like looking forward to going to Reno for 2022, because I think that'll be pretty dope. But what I want is I want to have this environment where we get like, I want to have like 50 people who are like Maj and Eric July and Hotep Jesus and Nico and like this. I want to have this group of people who are not afraid to say, shut the fuck up, bitch, sit down. We're going to, like, don't tell me what racism and anti-racism and all this other kind of shit is. Like, we let us speak to this issue, and y'all sit down and listen and learn, because that's the kind of shit that I think there's a lot of people who sound a a lot like the left and a lot like the right when they try to pretend like they have the solution to some shit. And then they always, they're always going to be like, well, have you read Thomas Sowell yet? It's like, really? So like, whereas me, this is me. When I had the opportunity to talk to Hotep Jesus about this kind of stuff, Thomas Sowell and Walter E. Williams were the furthest thing from my mind. I'm not going to like patronize the black guy by saying, hey, have you read these black guys who write stuff like this? No, I've said, hey, here's Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard, because this is the one thing, if there's one work that I can get in the hands of somebody that they only have like 45 minutes to read it, that's the one. And then
I don't know. I like freedom too.
If they have 3 hours, I give them freedom. But like, so I'm like, it's Anatomy of the State, Bastiat's the Law, freedom. Because I think, so for me, freedom is great once you kind of have started. Like it's great on its own, but I think that it's really helpful either freedom first and then the other ones, or the other ones and then freedom, in any order. I think that's like, to me, that's like the great triumvirate of like works that are really short, that like in a day you could have someone like just completely absorb and either reject or get more curious about freedom and like real like libertarian principles. But I mean, I had already given, when I told him about Anatomy of the State, I had already given him freedom. I went to an event in Brooklyn with Maj and Hotep Jesus and Doe Dubes and all them back in March of 2019, right after the book bomb in January. And I brought like 15 books and I handed them out to everybody there. I was like, whoever wants one, here you go. Have a book, read it. It's like 100 pages long. It's really short. And the other thing that's great about freedom, better than some of than Anatomy of the State and the Law, is that freedom is written in like today's English, and it's all like the whole book damn near is like all bumper stickers. Yeah. It's like one sentence, one liners that it's like my favorite thing and my favorite Adam Kokeshism of all time by far is this isn't in freedom, but this is the type of sentence that freedom contains, that book contains. He says, red and white and blue means freedom until it shows up in your rearview mirror.
Right.
Because ain't that the truth?
Yeah, you're right.
Red, white, blue means freedom until it shows up in the rearview.
Right. I made tons of
don't mean freedom then.
For Adam, like tons. Just taking the quotes and like line by line by line.
Yeah, well, I gave you that one, and you used it when he got arrested in New Orleans, because it was like you had the blue lights and everything, and so we were stenciling, we were water stenciling on the side of the road, and it was like the traffic was stopped, so it wasn't even like anything was going on. They just got out and they were doing this. Well, somebody thought we were painting, and they like complained about it, and so the cops came, and next thing you know, Adam's being hauled off to jail. And all we were doing was spraying water to clean. So what you do, you put the stencil and then you spray water, and it cleans the dirt off of the concrete in the shape of that stencil. And so then when you remove the stencil, the word freedom with the exclamation point was there. And they thought we painted it on there, but it was actually just, no, we just cleaned up. So we're doing charity work here.
Right. So this has been a good one, and I look for it to continue. Next week we're going to have my friend Tag Griffin on, who is the guy that I work with from Hearts in Hand, who's connected to the First Church Cannabis, and they do homeless outreach. Largely what we do is just give them food and those kinds of things, but we have been out with them. And so they do a lot of good work, and that's a solution to a problem that I think a lot of people can get into. So if anybody's made it this far into this, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And check out the store, get a t-shirt. there you go. That's one of our t-shirts. This is one of our t-shirts too.
I'm not wearing one, but I'm
Yeah,
wearing a
it's okay.
t-shirt, but I'm not wearing one of yours. So
Right. But yeah, check us out and stay free, my friends. Peace.